Dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our today's format, Visite. I'm always pretty happy when this day comes, because I enjoy reading your emails. And, of course, eliminating things from the crowd that can then be prepared for the show. Thank you for all the letters and for visiting us on visite.qs24.tv. That has already become a nice interaction and something very personal for me, even though it's private television, of course, but still different from sitting in a talk show. Today I have a letter from Magdalena. Magdalena, thank you very much. You write that you are 49 years old and feel very unwell. The background is actually the stressful situation in your profession that has been going on for years. You work in nursing. Now I also come from this era and know what it means to manage a family, business, for children, and then still today in a time that creates everything but the necessary compensation. But you write that you have been suffering from an rapid heartbeat for the last few weeks. The blood pressure goes up to 190 systolic, and you found during the examination at the doctor's office that the thyroid hormones have gone up. You have to know that the thyroid is our regulator that indicates whether a metabolism is adjusted or burning rapidly or working much too slowly. That means that today in medicine we hardly talk about such functional disorders of the thyroid, but of course we have a clear symptom when thyroid hormones are produced too much unexpectedly. And then, of course, a massive system is put under pressure, including blood pressure, metabolism, heart performance. But on the other hand, if the thyroid can no longer handle it, then all these processes are no longer possible. That the body can do them at the same time for us has a much, much slower metabolism. You write that the menstrual bleeding is no longer there. But you also write that the cortisol is still good during the day. That's the adrenal gland hormone. But on the other hand, it exhausts itself in the evening. And of course you have to know that cortisol and thyroid, that the body is in the framework of its so-called neuroendocrine axis, that is, the whole neurostress profile aligns with each other. That means that the body in a stressful situation, which it experiences, mobilizes everything so that it adapts to this situation over weeks, months, and sometimes even years. But that this then goes so far that such a state, which may only be called out once at the beginning, gradually leads to normality, receives information first, then adjusts itself regularly, and finally becomes a functional disorder. These are developments. And you write here that probably in a goiter event, which was described in 2015, that is, when the thyroid volume increases. The antibodies were also tested. And all of these antibodies were negative. That means that this antibody, the TPO, i.e., the thyroglobulin, but there are also so-called TSH receptors, antibodies for the hypothalamus, the thyroid of stimulation, with which one would then identify a morbus bacillus. That means, according to their information, these things are excluded. That there is no autoimmune event here. And yet you can't just leave it like that. And yet, of course, you have to act. Because a constant thyroid hormone regulation also means that in your rest, which the body also has to regulate. A lack of care is provoked here. Of course, this is connected to the heart rate, that the change of energy of the heart also has to be looked at. Because the heart consumes an incredible amount of energy, does it even keep up with production? These are, of course, things that also influence heart performance, which drive blood pressure up, and which, of course, also stimulate osteoporosis and many other things in the long term. That's why you have to tackle such a problem, of course. And in the end, of course, we can also talk about things that are and will be important therapeutically from my point of view. But fact is, you can't leave that to thyroid hormones. You have to look further. What about iron? What about ferritin? Is what's behind it perhaps a chronological inflammation that attacks this process? What about vitamin D and vitamin A? What about magnesium, zinc, and selenium? These are cofactors for thyroid hormones, for the preparation of thyroid hormones. And these things are important, that they are also examined by blood tests in the context of the inflammation process. And we're talking about silent inflammation, of silent inflammations that may have taken place over the years. Stress causes a so-called oxidative stress on the cellular level. That changes the cell metabolism. This oxidative stress can be examined in any complementary medical laboratory. You can also examine whether TNF-alpha, as this cytokine is called, is increased, because it is involved in all chronic inflammation processes. And there are also profiles that tell us, does this inflammatory cytokine react, which then also entails the cascade of inflammation. E.g. on frankincense. Frankincense acts like cortisone. On resveratrol. On curcumin. You can have that tested to give a natural counterregulation to an inflammation process. We don't even know how you are doing. If we know, we have it in our hands, we have to stop this oxidative stress first. Or we have to improve detoxification with it. Or can resveratrol, as a secondary plant substance, can curcumin or frankincense reduce this inflammation process? That means I wouldn't be idle now, but I would now turn to someone who is very far-sighted with these things from a complementary medical point of view. Far beyond the thyroid. To simply be assistive to the body in a helpful way. I've forgotten a little bit now that a so-called stress management is very important. I know that you can't get to rest in this hypothyroidic hyperfunction. But it's good to know that you took it out of the work process first, so that you can now approach these things in peace. It is very important to know at this moment that there are intestinal problems in the context of a so-called leaky gut syndrome. That means we've talked about it a lot. That the intestinal mucosa has become open due to inflammatory processes. You've put it so beautifully. I've lost myself a little bit in this life. Did I carry enough worry here at all? What is it when the intestine has an open passenger's closet, which I can have examined in a chair test, by the way? That's the zonulin, that's the alpha-antitrypsin, and that's the calprotectin. If I know that this open barrier is constantly producing inflammation in my body, and that inflammation can also focus on the thyroid, it can also focus on the lungs, then I constantly cough. I have to know that, because the immune system, which is constantly being challenged, is what the intestine uncontrollably lets into the body. Bacteria, fungi, viruses, hydrogen sulfide, scatol, that has to be slowed down. I don't know anyone with a thyroid functional disorder who has a healthy intestine. And how much has just passed us by? How much have we perhaps not even noticed in that respect? Or how much have we felt it and still counterregulated, because we were blocked, or we had diarrhea again and again? I can't take that away from the email now, but it is so important to take care of it and to examine a chair test in this respect. On the other hand, you can counterregulate quite a bit in terms of nutrition. If 85% of all people eat grain, especially gluten, which is highly polluted with glyphosate, which can also be measured as a herbicide. If the gluten comes away or if you exclude it from your diet, you reduce an inflammatory event. You don't even know how you feel if you integrate all of these things into your therapy for the thyroid to be worried about tomorrow. The thyroid hyperfunction is just that something in the body that has slipped away manifests here. And of course now the process you are dealing with has to be set up much more broadly than the endocrinologist considers it. Because the endocrinologist is currently looking at the function and wants to stop it. Sure, that can't stay that way in the long run, but it can't be stopped if all of this dissolves from your life. Listen carefully to what things are important to him and which therapeutic step he wants to take with you now. Gluten and grain are very important to get rid of from your diet now. And I might not necessarily switch to gluten-free, unless you have the strength to make your own potato bread or bake your own bread from a high-quality gluten-free mixture. But I just don't find these ready-made products that interesting. On the other hand, let's take a look at lectins, which are also plant proteins that cause inflammation in our body. Lectins, gluten, but also milk, dairy products and sugar. That's what I always do first when I treat people with functional disorders and, of course, with chronically latent inflammation. Because without an inflammation that was provoked in this body, and we consciously speak of silent inflammation, nothing can develop. In addition, every rapid pulse, and this is now extreme due to overfunctioning, but also people who have a latent higher pulse go back to a chronic infection. And now I also come to the question if there are perhaps viral processes that cause this. Epstein-Barr, infectious mononucleosis, other parasitic diseases that may have caused a shift in the intestine. Over the years, also in the context of this already burdened organ, a stoma has a background. Simply the cascade has now risen and has come to this overfunction. The other thing I wanted to tell you is, of course, that we also know different plants in medicine today or in natural medicine today. That are exactly at this point. And I work very, very much with the lycopus. Lycopus is the so-called wolf bunting. Whenever the clock of life has to turn faster, when life also loses its rhythm. Please never forget that medicine is a natural science, and it is a natural science, and nature out there binds itself to rules. It is regulated. And if these rules are not kept, and that is now unconscious in us, because the lycopus knows exactly when it has to produce more hormones, when it has to produce much less today, because there is not much to be done today, it is Sunday or it is vacation. And these rules are coordinated. And rules are never to be questioned. Rules know no exceptions. We humans create rules and create exceptions. But that does not exist in nature and in our body. And if we break these rules in the adaptation to our life, if we want more and more, if the adaptability of the body has to get bigger and bigger, then the wolf bunting starts exactly there and it rhythms us again. And it targets the thyroid, that is the liposperm acid, which creates a binding on the receptors that this process, which regulates itself so highly, gently regulates itself downwards. I am not yet in a causal therapy, but if you slowly understand why this process escalates so much, then I can of course turn it off. And then there is peace, but with all the consequences. Or I can try to understand it and help my entire organism. I like to work here. With the series drops. The company series is located in Switzerland. And I am deeply touched by the approach and the purity and clarity of these mother earth tinctures. But they don't bind. There are wonderful preparations in Germany, but especially the earth tincture, the mother tincture, especially in the lycopus, which prevents the production of too many thyroid hormones. And in this new rhythmization, and please give yourself time. Accompany it mentally as well as you can. And it starts now with better sleep hygiene. Maybe you are a wonderful mother, but with the goal of always doing everything perfectly. Let go of it and go deep into yourself and pay attention to yourself and let go of what you used to think had the greatest meaning in your life. No, it doesn't. Now you are the most important thing. Lycopus is a very beautiful plant with which I have a lot of experience. I have never had more than 5 drops 3 times a day with the earth tinctures. It's about a process and not about a strong break. It's about the information that was there, that it was shaken up. Now it's about the information that everything is fine. I like to write everything to the mirror at home or to the window panes. Or, I love you, just quickly on the glass shower curtain. With these pens I would write down that everything is fine, that the message arrives, that we don't have to calm down again. It's a process, it's a psychovegetative process. I can do that very well with Lycopus. I can also do that with motherwort. It's a plant that I often use for anxiety, heartbeats, restlessness. I can also do that with balm, lemon balm starting with 300 milligrams and then 600 milligrams. Maybe not everything, but feel with whom I already notice that I feel much better, that I can come to rest much better. But try to understand the whole thing better. Try to clarify further steps. There is the Society for Natural Healing. It's not that easy. You asked me to look who is close to you. I am sometimes not so regional. Try to find a holistic dentist if you still have amalgam in your mouth. Much more would be necessary now. Unfortunately, I have to come to an end now. But I think it's a great chance to act and maybe not immediately to take the final step to do a radiotherapy or an operation. With radiotherapy, you have to know that thyroid tissue is destroyed. But well, you won't want to get pregnant anymore. For 1 year after it's forbidden because the affinity for the ovaries is there. But an operation is an autonomous complex. Only a part is removed. Today you are much more aware than before. But the fact is, the thyroid wants to regulate itself and wants to have the final say what the body needs and not. If you go to a situation where the whole thyroid hormone situation is massively blocked, then it may be possible to build a bridge when herbal therapy isn't yours with medication. But you have to work on the causes. I don't think you would be the first to get out of this life crisis. Please try to shake off fear. Go in peace with your body. Our body is always the result of our life. He didn't mean it badly to provide you with this power for life for years. But now he needs your help. In this sense, Magdalena and all others who are affected in a similar way, I wish you a wonderful autumn week and look forward to the next visit. Please send your inquiries to Visite-at-QS24 TV. I would like to give you holistic advice. Sometimes it helps to be aware of the importance of the first time in your life. Goodbye.